You keep saying you want peace, but the moment life gets calm, you sabotage it. You overthink. You start drama. You disappear. Why? Because deep down, you don't feel safe when things are good. You don't trust happiness to stay, so you destroy it before it can leave you. And the worst part, you don't even know you're doing it. This isn't just trauma, it's a pattern, and it's eating your life from the inside out. So the real question isn't, why can't I be happy? It's, why do I keep pushing happiness away the moment it shows up? Let's talk about the truth you've been avoiding. There's a reason why self-sabotage feels so personal, so isolating, yet so universal. It's because it doesn't come from your conscious mind. It comes from your blueprint. Not the one you chose, but the one life carved into you when you weren't looking. This blueprint was formed when you were small, when you had no power, no language for your pain, and no control over the environment that shaped your identity. In those early years, your nervous system recorded the world like a camera records light. Every glance, every silence, every chaotic moment or emotional absence was encoded, not just in memory, but in your biology. You learned early what was safe and what wasn't. You learned whether your needs were a burden. You learned whether love had conditions. You learned whether peace was real or just a setup for betrayal. And you adapted, because adaptation is survival. But here's where the problem begins. What helped you survive back then is now destroying your ability to thrive. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This isn't just philosophy, it's psychological law. Every self-sabotaging behavior you exhibit today, every moment of hesitation, avoidance, self-criticism, withdrawal, self-doubt, it didn't begin in adulthood. It began as a strategy. A brilliant strategy, in fact, to protect you from pain, rejection, or abandonment. You weren't weak, you were smart. But now, that same strategy is outdated. Like a compass that once led you away from danger, now leading you in circles. Every time you near something good, something truly nourishing, a siren goes off. Not because something is wrong, but because your system doesn't recognize safety when it sees it. You're not broken. You're following an ancient map drawn by a frightened child. And that map, while once necessary, is keeping you locked in patterns you don't understand. Let's go deeper. Philosophers like Nietzsche believe that human beings are driven, not just by a will to survive, but by a will to meaning. And yet, in a world where meaning is scarce, people cling to suffering because it's the only thing that still feels real. Have you ever noticed how empty happiness can feel when you've never truly felt secure? It's because joy isn't just a feeling, it's a language. And if no one taught you how to speak it, you'll subconsciously return to pain. Not because you want to suffer, but because suffering is the only place you feel fluent. Schopenhauer once said, "A man can do what he wants, but he cannot will what he wills." In other words, you may want happiness, you may want love, you may want freedom, but if your will is rooted in fear, in trauma, in old stories, you will unconsciously choose what hurts every single time. Because your nervous system isn't designed to pursue truth, it's designed to pursue familiarity. This is the tragedy of the human condition. We chase what's familiar, not what's healthy. We cling to what we know even when it's destroying us. We run from what we need because needing feels like vulnerability. And vulnerability once meant danger. Enter the modern world. We live in a culture obsessed with performance, metrics, masks, productivity over peace, visibility over vulnerability. So we learn to fake confidence, hustle through emptiness, and achieve our way into approval. But this only fuels the original wound, that who you are without performance is somehow not enough. So the moment you pause, the moment you try to rest into happiness, that old voice creeps in. You haven't earned this. You're going to lose it. You're not doing enough. Don't get too comfortable. And so, even in your wins, you feel anxious. Even in your relationships, you feel alone. Even in your joy, you brace for loss. Because the deeper fear isn't failure, it's exposure. To be truly happy, truly at peace, means letting yourself be seen. And if you spent a lifetime hiding your wounds behind perfection, achievement, or caretaking, happiness feels like walking naked into a storm. It's no wonder you sabotage it. Because your mind isn't fighting you. It's fighting your old ghosts. The ones that whispered, "You're too much. You're not enough. Don't need anyone. Stay in control. Stay small. Don't trust happiness, it's a trap." But here's where it gets even darker. Self-sabotage isn't just personal. It's systemic. We are conditioned by a society that profits of our self-doubt. The beauty industry thrives on your belief that you are not attractive enough. The productivity cult feeds on your fear of being lazy. Social media normalizes constant comparison making. You believe happiness is something other people are allowed to have, not you. You were never meant to feel whole. You were meant to feel almost whole. Just enough to keep chasing. Just enough to keep buying. Just enough to keep proving. In this way, self-sabotage becomes normalized, not a malfunction, but a feature of the system, not a personal failure, but a byproduct of conditioning. So now we return to the core question. What happens when your soul is ready to receive what your nervous system still fears? The beauty industry thrives on your belief that you're not attractive enough. The productivity cult feeds on your fear of being lazy. Social media normalizes constant comparison making. You believe happiness is something other people are allowed to have, not you. You were never meant to feel whole. You were meant to feel almost whole. Just enough to keep chasing. Just enough to keep buying. Just enough to keep proving. In this way, self-sabotage becomes normalized, not a malfunction, but a feature of the system, not a personal failure, but a byproduct of conditioning. So now, we return to the core question. What happens when your soul is ready to receive what your nervous system still fears? You don't just need healing, you need reprogramming. You need to unlearn the lies that were wired into you before you even knew they were lies. Because until you do, you will keep choosing the pain that feels safe over the happiness that feels threatening. You'll call it fate. You'll call it bad luck. You'll say, I don't know why this always happens to me. But the truth is darker and more liberating. It's not happening to you. It's happening through you. You are not your sabotage. You are the awareness waking up inside of it. And that awakening is where everything begins to change. You think you're just overthinking. You think you're just indecisive. You think you're just not trying hard enough. But what if I told you that your self-sabotage isn't just ruining your chances at happiness? It's silently shaping every corner of your reality. Not loudly, not with explosions, but with quiet compromises, subtle hesitations, micro decisions that feel harmless until you look back and realize they've built an entire life you didn't consciously choose. You didn't just miss opportunities. You became someone who stopped seeing them. You didn't just lose love. You became someone who believed love couldn't survive you. You didn't just fail to grow. You became someone who learned to settle for people, for pain, for patterns. Let's get brutally honest. Self-sabotage doesn't always look like catastrophe. It often looks like almost applying for the job, almost speaking your truth, almost trusting someone new, almost breaking the cycle, almost healing before slipping back into the comfort of pain. And that almost becomes a rhythm, a way of life, until one day, you don't even realize you're doing it. You think you're being careful, practical, realistic, but underneath it all, fear, shame, unworthiness. That's the ghost driving your decisions. That's the filter distorting your reality. There's a name for this in psychology: cognitive dissonance. It's the tension that happens when your actions don't align with your beliefs. But here's the twist: most of us walk around with conflicting beliefs, absorbed unconsciously from childhood. One part of you believes you're worthy of love. Another part believes love always ends in betrayal. You didn't just fail to grow. You became someone who learned to settle for people, for pain, for patterns. Let's get brutally honest. Self-sabotage doesn't always look like catastrophe. It often looks like almost applying for the job, almost speaking your truth, almost trusting someone new, almost breaking the cycle, almost healing before slipping back into the comfort of pain. And that almost becomes a rhythm, a way of life, until one day, you don't even realize you're doing it. You think you're being careful, practical, realistic, but underneath it all, fear, shame, unworthiness. That's the ghost driving your decisions. That's the filter distorting your reality. There's a name for this in psychology: cognitive dissonance. It's the tension that happens when your actions don't align with your beliefs. But here's the twist: most of us walk around with conflicting beliefs, absorbed unconsciously from childhood. One part of you believes you're worthy of love. Another part believes love always ends in betrayal. One part of you wants peace. Another part believes peace means you've let your guard down. So you bounce between poles, wanting and rejecting, chasing and retreating, building and destroying. You create emotional static, and that noise drowns out your intuition. You stop trusting your gut. You question your feelings. You suppress your truth. And the worst part, you think this is normal, but it's not. It's trauma turned inward. It's unmet needs dressed as personality traits. It's survival mode masquerading as just how I am. Now adding confirmation bias. Your brain is wired to search for patterns and confirm what it already believes. So if you believe deep down that you are not lovable, guess what you unconsciously notice? The rejection, not the praise. The failure, not the progress. The silence, not the care. Your nervous system becomes an algorithm, curating your emotional experience to match your inner narrative. See, they didn't text back. You must be too much. See, that project didn't work out. You are not good enough. See, they left. Just like everyone else, your brain reinforces your pain. Your body prepares for loss, and slowly, your world shrinks. Let's go deeper. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, once said when a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. That's exactly what self-sabotage trains you to do. It disconnects you from meaning. It convinces you to numb instead of feel, escape instead of heal. And in a world filled with distractions, avoidance becomes an easy addiction. Scrolling instead of journaling, ghosting instead of communicating, working instead of resting, criticizing instead of confronting your hurt. You start treating symptoms instead of the sickness. You try to fix the anxiety, but never ask what it's protecting you from. You try to silence the inner critic, but never explore who taught you to hate your own voice. Once said when a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. That's exactly what self-sabotage trains you to do. It disconnects you from meaning. It convinces you to numb instead of feel, escape instead of heal. And in a world filled with distractions, avoidance becomes an easy addiction. Scrolling instead of journaling, ghosting instead of communicating, working instead of resting, criticizing instead of confronting your hurt. You start treating symptoms instead of the sickness. You try to fix the anxiety, but never ask what it's protecting you from. You try to silence the inner critic, but never explore who taught you to hate your own voice. This is how self-sabotage becomes institutionalized in your life. A shadow management system always running in the background. A puppet master whose strings you didn't even know were wrapped around your soul. And then you age, but your blueprint doesn't. You are older, yes, maybe wiser, but still acting from the same scripts. Still following the same emotional choreography, written by a version of you who didn't know any better. This is why real growth often feels like grief, because healing requires confronting the life you could have lived if you weren't at war with yourself. It requires mourning the intimacy you never allowed, the opportunities you didn't take, the boundaries you never set, the identity you suppressed to keep others comfortable. It's a kind of quiet devastation, realizing that you have, in so many ways, abandoned yourself while blaming the world for the ache. But wait, there's more. Self-sabotage doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone around you. Your relationships become distorted mirrors. You attract people who match your inner chaos, or you push away people who challenge it. You either overgive and become resentful, or undercommunicate and become misunderstood. You teach people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. So if you abandon your needs, they will too. If you ignore your boundaries, they'll keep crossing them. If you believe you're unlovable, they'll eventually stop trying to love you. Not because they don't care, but because you never let them see the real you. And how can anyone truly love you if you're still hiding behind the mask? This is the hidden cost of self-sabotage. Not just missed chances, but a diluted existence. A life lived half asleep. A self never fully expressed. A soul never fully embraced. And it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Because now you see it. You see the consequences. You feel the weight. You understand the patterns. And awareness is the beginning of everything. So now we ask, what happens when you decide not just to stop sabotaging, but to start reclaiming? That's where we go next. What if everything you were taught about healing is wrong? What if breaking free isn't about becoming someone new, but remembering who you were before the fear took over, before you started performing, before you learned to smile through disappointment, before you shrank to fit someone else's comfort zone, before survival became your personality? This is the rebellion. Not loud, not chaotic, but sacred, intentional, radical in its softness. It begins not with a thunderous declaration, but with a whisper, I'm done abandoning myself. There's a moment in every inner revolution when you wake up and realize you've been negotiating with your own worth, apologizing for your existence, dimming your light in the name of not being too much. And one day, you look in the mirror and don't recognize the person staring back, not because they're broken, but because they're buried. Buried beneath people-pleasing, buried beneath perfectionism, buried beneath the performance of having it all together. But here's the secret no one told you. You don't need to be better to be worthy. You just need to remember. Remember what it felt like to trust your voice, to follow your curiosity without shame, To walk into a room without carrying your entire trauma history like armor. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So let's make it conscious. Let's name the patterns. Let's speak the forbidden truths. You sabotage your happiness not because you're weak, but because somewhere along the way, pain became safer than peace. Peace feels unfamiliar. It feels suspicious. It feels like the calm before the storm. So your nervous system, trained by chaos, rejects it. It scans joy for threats. It mistrusts ease. It self-destructs not to fail, but to feel in control of the fall. Because to fall on your own terms feels less scary than waiting for someone else to drop you. But what if you paused? What if you stopped chasing worthiness and started reclaiming it? This doesn't mean motivational quotes. This doesn't mean pretending to be confident. It means learning how to reparent your nervous system. How to sit with discomfort long enough to realize it won't kill you. It means letting silence speak without rushing to fill it. It means choosing the relationship that feels boring. Because peace feels boring when your baseline is anxiety. It means saying no to the patterns that feel like home, because not all homes are safe. Here's a radical truth. Healing will make you feel worse before it makes you feel better. Why? Because self-love is disruptive. It challenges your loyalty to the pain you normalized. It asks you to grieve the version of yourself who survived by staying small. But grief is not regression. Grief is proof that you are finally telling the truth. You'll grieve the friendships that were built on self-abandonment. You'll grieve the ambition that was driven by unworthiness. You'll grieve the old you not because they were wrong, but because they didn't know how to be free. So what does rebellion look like in real life? It looks like rest, not earned, not justified, just chosen. It looks like boundaries, not to push people away, but to honor your sacred energy. It looks like play, without productivity, without shame. It looks like telling someone you are not okay, and not apologizing for the heaviness in your voice. It looks like forgiving yourself not for what you did, but for what you didn't know. It looks like meeting your inner critic with curiosity instead of war, asking whose voice is this really? Your mother? Your ex? The childhood teacher who mocked you? And when you realize it was never yours to carry, you start putting it down. But rebellion isn't just emotional, it's existential. It means challenging the entire system that taught you love must be earned, that joy must be deserved, that you must suffer before you rest. It means redefining success not by how much you achieve, but by how deeply you feel. It means asking yourself, am I building a life I actually want, or just one that looks good enough to post? You don't have to be a martyr to be meaningful. You don't have to be perfect to be safe. You don't have to be productive to deserve love. This is your revolution. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop chasing happiness, you create space for it to arrive. Not because you're finally enough, but because you finally stop trying to be. The parts of you that sabotage are not evil. They're scared. They're tired. They're still waiting for permission to rest. Give it to them. You are not lazy. You are exhausted. You are not broken. You are adapting. You are not too much. You are finally overflowing with truth. So let the rebellion begin in your smallest decisions. Say no without guilt. Say yes without needing a reason. Say nothing and still feel whole. The systems you internalized of perfectionism, self-denial, punishment won't collapse overnight. But the moment you choose self-trust over fear, you begin shaking their foundation, and someday soon, they'll crumble under the weight of your rising. What if the happiness you keep chasing never actually left you? What if it was never about finding joy but about removing what numbs it? Not the pain, not the heartbreak, not even the trauma, but the walls you build to survive them. Because happiness, real happiness, is terrifying when you've been surviving. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, the sun rising behind you. The air is crisp, there's no threat, no chaos. And still, your body flinches, your chest tightens, your mind looks for an exit. That's what healing feels like. You finally step into peace and everything inside of you screams, this can't be safe. So you run, you self-sabotage, you pick fights, you chase unavailable people, you procrastinate on your dreams, you pretend not to care, because to fully open your heart means risking the one thing you swore you'd never feel again, abandonment. But here's the truth most people never dare to say. You're not afraid of being unhappy. You're afraid of being happy and losing it. You're afraid of hope, afraid of trust, afraid of letting life get good only to watch it crumble in your hands. So you ruin things. You sabotage joy before it can leave you. Because if you end it, at least it was your choice. If you leave first, at least you were in control. If you don't dream too big, you can't fall too far. But in protecting yourself from pain, you also protect yourself from life. Here's the final truth. You are already whole. You've just been taught to look everywhere but within. The happiness you're looking for. It's not at the end of another achievement. It's not hiding in a person who'll finally see you. It's not waiting on the other side of productivity. It's buried underneath your need to prove yourself. It's behind the version of you that learned to perform. Behind the laughter you fake to make others comfortable. Behind the roles you play to avoid being left behind. Real happiness isn't loud. It's not glamorous. It's not what you post on social media. It's quiet, subtle, rebellious. It's waking up and not feeling dread. It's saying no and not explaining. It's eating when you're hungry, resting when you're tired. It's looking in the mirror and saying, I don't need to earn my place in the world today. You were never the problem. Your symptoms were the solution. Your self-sabotage was protection. Your procrastination was resistance to a life that never felt like yours. Your anxiety was your body saying, this isn't safe, even if it looks like it should be. And now that you know this, you don't need to fight yourself anymore. The final realization isn't that you need to change who you are. It's that you need to return. Return to the self you exiled. Return to the voice you silenced. Return to the needs you dismissed. Return to the joy that was once effortless. Not because it will fix everything, but because it's the only thing that was ever real. Jean-Paul Sartre once wrote, freedom is what you do with what's been done to you. And Viktor Frankl echoed that, saying between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. This is your space. This is your freedom. To choose differently. To love differently. To live differently, not from fear, but from fullness. You were never meant to betray yourself just to feel safe. You were never meant to twist into someone else's idea of lovable. You were never meant to suffer to deserve softness. So what now? Now, you start small. You stop performing joy and start noticing it. You stop chasing meaning and start creating it. You stop waiting for someone to rescue you and become the home you were always searching for. You forgive yourself for what you did, for what you didn't do, for who you became just to make it through. You breathe deeper. You move slower. You live more honestly. You recognize that the parts of you that sabotage are not broken. They are begging you to slow down and listen, because buried beneath them is the softest truth. You were always enough. You just didn't feel safe enough to believe it. Let this be your reckoning. Let this be your reawakening. You are no longer the version of you who needed to survive at all costs. You are no longer at war with yourself. You are no longer auditioning for love, peace, or belonging. You are the author now. The story isn't over. It's only just beginning. And this time, you write it from joy, not fear. From truth, not trauma. From wholeness, not lack. Because the happiness you were chasing, it was never lost. It was waiting for you to finally stop running and come home.